Speaking about the matter, it was important that as senior leaders of the ANC, they present to the National Executive Committee of the ANC what should be the substantive approach to the national dialogue and how do we get it to be as representative as possible and as legitimate as possible in the eyes of the people of South Africa, so that we get the outcome of a vision and action plan for the country that is a product of a multi-stakeholder engagement, which includes voices from a cross-section of South African society that gives weight to the voice of the South African working class, the rural poor, the unemployed and the employed, the professionals of South Africa, the religious movement in South Africa, the student movement, political parties themselves, and all other sections of civil society. So the president of the ANC is going to be closing the meeting pretty soon, having taken into account all the discussions that have been had in the past 2 days. So at this point, as agreed, we will have a press briefing in which some of those discussions that have been had will be reflected upon. The particular one that we'll be having today will be a press briefing led by comrades David Makura and Phoebe Potgieter, reflecting essentially about the political situation that the ANC understands to be animated by the elections results. Thank you very much. I can take whatever specific questions you have, if any. About the NEC first. Yes, I'm here.
So just on the discussions you mentioned about the social compact, isn't that something that you've been discussing for years in terms of how to approach our challenges? Shouldn't implementation be at the fore of this? What's coming out that's new that you haven't discussed before?
No, we're not social compacting. Social compacting is a conversation of a broad array of stakeholders. We've been discussing the need to have such a social compact, but we've never actually gotten into the work of having that social compact playing itself out. The national dialogue is a proposal about social compacting, essentially. There's an agreement now that there should be that national dialogue. The president has said it ought to happen this year. So the issue now is about the modalities of who gets into that platform of the national dialogue, so that the outcome is truly reflective of a substantive social compact. So what you are saying, we've been saying, is that we've been saying there will be such a social compacting. But now we've already agreed that there ought to be a date for that social compact. And of course, the president will deal with that issue in time about when can we have it. But the issue now is who gets into the dialogue. Yes.
Okay, in terms of policy review, the ANC, does it have a policy review, and what's the time frame around policy review, from immigration to, to everything?
So the ANC's policy review process starts with the National General Council. That will be sometime in 2025. It goes to the ANC's National Policy Conference. It goes to the National Conference of the ANC. But between now and then, discussions in the ANC are always taking place about how best do we approach particular policies, do we think implementation is correct, and what do we do about it. Any other question? National Executive Committee meeting first, Natasha. Anything about the NEC? Junior.
Junior Commander from Newsroom Africa. On the national dialogue,
Yes.
Has the ANC approached other parties to basically ask them to be a part of this, or firstly you are going to discuss what you envision the national dialogue to be before you go out and make an invite to parties, civil society and all of that?
It's the modalities I'm talking about. The in-principle understanding is a national dialogue, for it to be a true social compact, has got to include as representative as possible a cross-section of the South African stakeholder framework. So that includes civil society formations, and so the discussion now has been about the modalities of how best do we do that so that it has the legitimacy that it needs.
So
Yes.
just as a follow-up to Junior, and I know I raised it with you, but just to get a soundbite, have you decided on a date of the national dialogue? Is this something that is going to take place this year or not?
No, the ANC is not the one that is going to arbitrarily say this is the date and so on. It's the president as head of state will be the one who gives us an indication of how to approach that. But an undertaking has already been made by the president in parliament, if you recall, that the intention is to have it sometime this year, time permitting. Yes, sir.
Shannon Merrick's Kasi Broadcasting. When I hear of this national dialogue, it almost sounds like what happened with the Freedom Charter. the ANC called everybody put in their clause and so on. Is that what the ANC is looking? Getting churches, civil society, health sector, education, is that the idea?
You get it very right, Shannon. You are the one who gets it, what we're trying to do. The Freedom Charter model and the Congress for a Democratic Future that was held in 1989. That's the sort of model that we have. So that there is no single political force in South Africa that arbitrarily says this is what the future ought to look like or these are the concerns of South Africans. We want to have a national conversation, a national dialogue whose outcomes will be as broadly representative of the spirit and understanding of the South African people. That's why I was saying it includes making sure that you maximize the representation of the voice of the rural poor, of the farm dwellers, of all the other social forces in South Africa that might be neglected from everyday discourse. So it's essentially about sort of reproducing the model of what the Freedom Charter did. And Shannon is correct. South Africans underestimate that the first blueprint of a social compact that South Africa has is actually the Freedom Charter. And that is what we are reanimating again. Okay, Natasha, you want to go outside the NEC? Let's go.
Just on international matters, issue in Venezuela, I know you sent a delegation, there's the ANC, Middle East, and lastly Zimbabwe, the rest of opposition leaders.
Mm-hmm. So, on the Venezuela matter, the ANC is keeping an eye on the situation, and our delegation is going to provide us with a comprehensive report on the developments and their reading of the situation. And at that point, the ANC will give a more substantive comment. On the issue of the Zimbabwe situation, we've noted reports that some political parties in South Africa suggest that should lead to the rescheduling of the SADC summit that is going to be held in Harare. The ANC does not agree with that stance. If there are issues arising in Zimbabwe that require the intervention of the SADC community, it will have to happen, including as part of the summit itself. South Africa has never had the position that we ought to run away from areas of conflict and say our best bet of engaging in solving conflict is to pull away. If South Africa has got to go there to help in any situation, if there are concerns about political violence, we'll have to do it in Zimbabwe, not away from them. On the question of the Middle East, you might recall that South Africa and the ANC have been insisting that a solution to the situation in the Middle East needs a negotiated settlement. And you cannot negotiate and you still have the intervention of violence as a punctuation in that. So what has happened with the bombing, which has led to the deaths of some of the leaders of the other side, doesn't bode well with the intention of a peaceful resolution of conflict. So the ANC really condemns the acts of violence that undermine the effort for a peaceful settlement of the situation in the Middle East.
Sorry.
Have you?
Are there any discussions around the 95 Libyans that were found in our borders, suspected military training? How concerning is this that it's happening, and what does the ANC know about that?
So that discussion will, there's a Lekgotla coming, and in the Lekgotla we deal specifically with issues of policy related to government matters. And as we had said initially, we've noted all of these matters. We are paying attention to them, but we said let's focus firmly on the issue that was on the agenda, and then the Lekgotla will express itself in more detail on those issues once we get a comprehensive report about what the issues are. Anyone? Are we good? Thank you very much. Last one.
Okay. In terms of South Africa, what is your opinion in terms of the Miss SA currently?
The Secretary General replied to this question 2 days ago. We said that as far as we understand, Miss South Africa has organizers. The organizers must address the issue if there are any issues that are of concern. Otherwise, the ANC cannot venture into matters that are arising on social media without understanding what the real substantive problem is. As far as we are concerned, the organizers of Miss South Africa have an obligation to address South Africans if South Africans have any concern related to the organizing of the event. Thank you. Okay, guys, let's kill it now. We'll meet at, what's the time now?
1:30.
Yeah, let's say 1:30 or so.
Okay, 1:30 is the time set. They must have, of course, for the next media briefing that will be held by the African National.
Was my voice loud enough this time around?
Yeah.
Third and final day of the meeting.
I'm not going to have a
Maybe it's alive.
Yeah. Then we fed those other fish rolls, no?
Oh, not yet.
Okay. Please, I think you can feed it after this.
Will be open discussion.
When I live crossing the
Where,
African
of course, they'll
They'll tell me at 12. Yeah. What time is it now?
in Boxburg.